me, I'm pleased to introduce today's guest speaker, Rosanne Welch, the Executive Director of the MFA in Screenwriting at Stephens College and author and editor of numerous books, including When Women Wrote Hollywood. She'll share more about the film and how it helped establish many of the tropes we now associate with the Western genre and various other elements as well. So I'll hand over to Rosanne.
Hi everybody, it's lovely to be here today, and thank you all for coming. It is lovely to have the air conditioning. Remember when they first had air-conditioned theaters, it was a big deal in the 50s. It was a reason people would go to the movies. So it's fun we're doing that today. Yes, indeed, that's who I am, Dr. Rosanne Welch. I work for Stephens College, which is actually located in Missouri, but we run an MFA program out here in Los Angeles, and so we talk a lot about screenwriting, and that's what we're going to talk about today. I, too, like to include a land acknowledgement in all of the lectures that I give. We are on the land that belonged to the Tonga people. I learned to do this on a visit to New Zealand, and the New Zealanders are ahead of us. So it reminded me that we should do that here in Los Angeles, and it's very, I think, very special, and we're seeing, as Ben said, the celebration of the peoples who were here before us, and I think that's lovely. It reminds me that we also have to discuss, although it will not be the focus of my talk, that the Indians are not portrayed very well in this film. This is very typical for films of this period. I am not an expert in this, so that will not be the focus of my talk, but I turn your attention to this wonderful series called What is a Western, which was presented by the Autry. It's online. That's the link you can go to if you'd like to hear it. And Liza Black has this wonderful book about Indians, Native Americans working in film in this period, where she traced the people who were in these films, who played as extras and used the money to help their families. And so I think if you are interested, you should most certainly read her book and check out that podcast. There are several other in that What is a Western series that are quite fun. Me, as a background, I was a TV writer for 20 years, and I wrote on all these shows you may or may not have heard of along the way. And now I'm an academic. And I am on the board of directors for these various publications, including California History, which is a great journal they have in most libraries here. We just had one of our students publish an article in that journal, so we're very excited about that. And again, the Stephens College is in Missouri, but we host our MFA here. You can see on the left, that's the lot on Formosa. It was originally Samuel Goldwyn's lot. It was originally Mary Pickford and Douglas Fairbanks' lot. We are steeped in history in this town, and I love that. And then my program's goal is for people to learn to write, to reach out, and to represent themselves well on screen. And these are all books I've written. So let's talk about what we're going to do today, which is talking about the importance of writers. Yes, we all know that we have this auteur theory and we define movies by their directors, but I think that's unfair. I think that, in fact, when you remember films, you remember the dialogue and the plots and the moments that really stayed with you. Yes, of course, directors are important, but I think they're equal to the writer, and I think we have forgotten that in our time. So for me, I want us to remember that the word writer does precede director when we are talking about writer-directors. That's how important the words are and the structure is. This is from Orson Welles, who we all know as a director. However, in his opinion, the writer should have the first and last word in filmmaking. And he did in his radio work, and of course he did in film because he became a writer-director. When you talk to friends about movies, you don't always discuss the shots. You don't know exactly what the camera work is about. What you do is you discuss the dialogue. You remember the lines that you love from all the movies that you love. And I think that's what we're going to talk about today. I also love this quote from Frances McDormand. A lot of times we say screenplays are blueprints, like, oh, they're all going to be changed when we go on set. But that's not true, right? A good screenplay is not changed. It's enhanced by the work of all the other people, not just the director, everybody else involved in the film. And I think that's the position I'm coming from. And I just happen to love this Nora Ephron quote, because it's true. And it's typically what a female would say about how most of the male directors like to take so much attention for their work. But if there's a caterer, it's really not that hard. So we are going to focus today on the work of this gentleman, Dudley Nichols. And Dudley Nichols was known as a writer who gave tone and class to popular genres. It's not news to us that Stagecoach is considered classic, but Westerns were not at this moment. People felt that we had run through all that Westerns could do. There was nothing special about them anymore. Dudley came from Wapakoneta, Ohio. I am from Cleveland, Ohio, so I love to find artists who come from Ohio. I also think it's cute. That's where astronaut Neil Armstrong came from. And you probably see the word on U-Hauls in our town whenever they're coming and going. And he wrote 76 films in his career. That's not a tiny career. Many of them are clearly movies that you have heard of, and you can recognize as either being made from books, or clearly very, very important pieces that got very important actors to want to be part of them. He's famous. I'm in the Writers Guild. We have some Writers Guild members here today. Very exciting. We all know that Marlon Brando turned down an Oscar at a certain point, but actually, Dudley turned it down first, because at the time he won the Oscar for this film, The Informer, the producers were not recognizing the Screenwriters Guild. So he turned down the Oscar in a demonstration against that. He was a co-founder of the Screenwriters Guild, which is the forerunner of the Writers Guild. So we're very proud of him in the Writers Guild. He did accept it 2 years later when they finally accepted that the guild existed. But what's important about The Informer is it was directed by John Ford. And unto that point, John Ford had been doing B westerns. Nothing that stood out, nothing that made him very important. It was this film that everybody defined as the way he brought a new importance to his work. That's because Dudley wrote him a quality piece of material that he could direct, right? He had something of quality to work on. And to me, that's really, really important. This is the opinion of Edward Bascombe, who wrote this book about Stagecoach. Very interesting look into it. Though I will admit that in reading it, he often credits director Ford with things that Dudley Nichols did. That happens a lot in academic writing about films. He was so important, you'll notice, in the lobby cards they used to send to all the theaters when you could find out what movies were coming. His name is right there. Very important to know this is a screenplay by Dudley Nichols. It's hard now to find that on Wikipedia. You have to go to the second page. It's not on the first page of Wikipedia. And also the way that we have remembered them, of course, is either it's a John Wayne film or a John Ford film, right? That, to me, is not fair. It's a powerful story of 9 strange people. It's a story. It's a story that draws us in. Yes, it's directed beautifully, and we're going to love the scenery, but you can't just show scenery for 2 hours, right? It's about the people that we've come to love, and so we're going to look at what Dudley Nichols did. I like to say it's not the first movie that was filmed in Monument Valley. In fact, this one was. It's called The Vanishing American. It was written by this woman, Ethel Doherty, and it's based on a Zane Grey novel. So we already knew that people could work in Monument Valley and that it was a beautiful place to shoot. The story itself comes from this short story by this gentleman, Ernest Haycox. And I think it's really fun to find out that his idea of working as a writer was that he would get up every day, put on a suit in his own home, and then sit from 9 to 5 and write. That's the job of a writer. And by doing that, he produced over 300,000 words and sold short stories to all the major magazines of their day, including The Stage to Lordsburg, which is what this is based on. So these are a lot of Westerns we may or may not have heard of, and it's important to credit. They're the ones that are considered, they change things. Anytime the Western was dying, one of these movies came along and made us go, wow, Westerns are amazing. Look what we can do with them. So obviously The Great Train Robbery is silent. It's one of the very first that made us go, ooh, interesting, right? I like William S. Hart. You can go to Hart Park up in Newhall, a really cool place to hang out. He left his estate to the city. So when I first moved to LA and I had no money because I was an out-of-work writer, we called them to go spend the day there, and we had to ask if they had a parking fee because we didn't have enough money to pay to park our car. And they said no. He gave it to the city on the condition that they would never charge for anything. And they still don't. So it's a lovely place to go hang out and see a beautiful home with Frederick Remington statues, and he has the largest collection of Navajo rugs. So William S. Hart is important, although the film itself, not so much. And then, of course, you recognize all these other films. I always like to end on Rango. What a silly movie, but an adorable movie because it uses a lot of the tropes. And he tells you all the stages of a movie. If you ever read books on how to write movies, he says, oh, this is my turning point. Oh, this is the inciting incident. Oh, this is the climax. It's hilarious. So, some movies to think about when you go home. All right, so what did Dudley do that changed from this piece that was written by Haycox? What did he do? He deepened the characters. If anyone teaches screenwriting, these are many of the books people tell you to read, and they all tell you that we must know what the character wants and what they need. And the story has to be a journey of getting those things. And this is a fascinating movie because he made sure every single character had a journey, right? I mean, it's a journey movie, they're riding a stagecoach. But the idea that every one of them had something they were hoping for, and something got in the way, and then they overcame it. Not just the lead. Even though it is a John Wayne film nowadays, every single character is going to have that moment, and that's what really makes it such a strong piece. He did not just copy and paste that short story. He had to completely reconstruct it so it would work on film. So, for instance, in the short story, our hooker with a heart of gold is just a brassy madam. She's just full of it. She knows what she does. She tells him right away, I run a whorehouse. That's what I do. That's it. Nothing else really happens. That's it. That's who she is. But in this version, she's going to become this super compassionate person who, I mean, I'm giving away some things, but, you know, there's going to be a baby and there's going to need someone to help birth the baby, and she's going to be good at that. But she's also going to take care of folks who get shot. So she's going to have a whole ability to show us how more special she is than just being the hooker with the heart of gold. That's why Claire Trevor agreed to do it. Hatfield in the piece is just a gambler, nothing special, just a gambler traveling from town to town, no goals, no interest, just wants to make money. In this, we deal with the fact that he's a ruined Confederate officer, and that's beginning the conversation about what was wrong with that war and how did people who fought it felt, right? And so he's also then going to become important. Lucy Mallory starts out in the short story as just an army girl, doesn't even really have a name, and she's going to meet her boyfriend, who's at some fort in the other town they're going to. By the time we're done, she's actually a pregnant officer's wife. Oh, because pregnancy, climax, folks, that's an important thing. If somebody's pregnant, you know, it's like Chekhov's gun. If there's a gun, there's going to be a shooting. If there's a pregnant woman, there's going to be a baby getting birthed in this movie, let me tell you. So it gives her, right, a trajectory. It also gives her some respectability. And so there's a lovely sort of play between the respectable characters in society and the ones who aren't respected in society. And we're going to watch the unrespected ones become the respected ones. And that itself is also a journey that Dudley Nichols has created. This guy, Josiah Bone, doesn't do much in the first short story. He's just a wino. That's it. So Dudley made him a alcoholic doctor. Much bigger problem to deal with, and that's why he's being kicked out of town, right? He did such a brilliant job both writing it and acting it that Thomas Mitchell received the Best Supporting Actor Oscar for this. You may recognize him in 1939. He will as well play Scarlett O'Hara's father in Gone with the Wind. He was in a bunch of movies in 1939. He was the go-to. He's the John Goodman of his day, right? All right, and of course we know that the Ringo Kid is John Wayne. In the short story, he's just out for revenge. That's it. I'm going to go kill the guys who killed my brother. That's it. In this film, he's been wrongly convicted. He does know the people who actually committed the crime that was killing one of his relatives, and he is going to find them. And yes, there's going to be a gunfight. But it's not the focus, right? The focus is he's this wrongly convicted guy. Will anybody trust him again? And of course, that's what the hooker with the heart of gold is going to do, right? This is a lovely character in the piece. They call him a whiskey drummer. I love that phrase. There's some good old words from the past. It just means he's a whiskey salesman. They used to wear drums around their neck and bang on them when they entered a town, so you'd know that's where you could go to buy a bottle of whiskey. Who knew, right? So in this film, in the short story, he dies. And the hooker with a heart of gold takes care of him. In this, he doesn't die because he's too fun. He's the comic relief, right? In the short story, this guy is just a cattleman, right? Nothing much. Here, he's a banker who's embezzled money from the town, and he's on the run. Again, think of every single character has something they're fighting to go do, something they're running away from. Gives so much drama and so much tension to the story that doesn't have any of this in the short story. It's just kind of a nice little piece. And then, of course, Andy Devine, who most people know is a brilliant, brilliant sidekick. Funny thing is, he mostly worked with Roy Rogers, not with the gentleman the whole museum here is named after. They did not get to work together very much, but he's a well-recognized person, and he is also just really the comic relief in both the short story and in the film, because you need that. Another thing Dudley did for us is he gave much more deeper connections between the characters. They don't have any connection. They're just a set of 9 unknown people. But in the film, we find out that Lucy's father was the commander of his regiment. So now we know Lucy came from the South, right? And now, do they want to talk to each other or not? Or does he feel protective about her, right? So they have a reason to be connected. And then Doc recognizes Dallas as being a hooker from town who's also been kicked out. So they have something in common. Nobody in that town wants them anymore. anymore. And he used to take care of Ringo's brother who was shot. All right, so he's connected in ways they were not in the short story. I think it's important to remember that movies are time capsules of the eras in which they're made. So we have to bring ourselves back to 1939. I could have made slides and slides on this. We all know lots of history. But these are just some fun, interesting things. This is only 20 years after the Buffalo Bill show stopped. 20 years, 1939, right? 20 years after you could have seen Buffalo Bill do one of his Wild West shows. And equally, the Great War, which we all know was still called the Great War in 1939, right? So that's the place our brains are at. And funny thing, in California, that's when Hewlett-Packard was started. I had no idea, and they're still around today. General Francisco Franco took power in Madrid, so we're going to start getting involved in that war, and that's going to be our lead-up to World War II. Marian Anderson performed at the Lincoln Memorial, so we have civil rights going on, the beginning of the civil rights movement in that place. Al Capone was released. I don't know, I had to include an Italian. I'm Italian. That was the most famous one of the day. And Poland was invaded by Nazi Germany. So we're starting to worry about these kinds of things. And this is all happening while this movie is becoming so popular. Now, he also wrote direction. Sometimes we tell new students, you can't write direction in your script, let the director do that. No, because your script has to be read by someone who will think it's good enough to put money behind it, which means it has to read like it's already been filmed. And so that means you do write direction. You just find a more useful way. You don't say close up on or pan down. And this is how he did it. He basically told you to pan Monument Valley, right? He told you that's how it's going to look at the start of the scene, and he does it throughout the script. All right, the other thing that stands about his writing is that everything escalates constantly. They never let you go. It's a bit like a thriller, except they're sitting in the stagecoach most of the time. And yet the thrill aspect is growing and growing and growing. And I think that's very cool. I also think it's important to think about how female characters were treated. During the attack, the men won't trust any of the women with a gun, which is kind of stupid because if a lot of people are shooting at me, I want everyone near me to have a gun, I guess, right? I would want us all to do that. And women in the day all knew how to use firearms. That's fine. But what is good is that Dallas doesn't have to die for her sins. No, she's a hooker, but we don't have to kill her because she did a bad thing. She's going to survive, and she's going to win. Hello, spoiler alert. She's going to win the boy. She's going to get to be married and be respectable. It's amazing, right? And each of these women is choosing to travel to determine their own future. They're no one has told them to do this. And that's a special way to represent women back in the day. So I think he's doing that. He was married to his wife for over 50 years. So I think Dudley Nichols is a guy who respected women. I think that's a big deal. We also have to note that the Hays Code was going on in this period. And the Hays Code is what kept us from certain things, right? In the short story, she actually does admit out loud that she's a hooker. We never say that in the movie. It's just inferred. You can figure it out, right? So maybe children wouldn't have known. And also, when the whiskey salesman is shot, he dies. And she holds his body in the stagecoach for miles until they get to a place where they could bury him. So she's really strong and really powerful and really capable. We don't see that in the movie because they decided not to kill that character. And then she also, in the movie, is going to help deliver the baby, which is considered a more female thing to do. So little changes, not too much. We'll also see that for a movie that's a Western, we're not going to see the gunfight. We don't need to see it. He walks across, we hear some guns, come back, he's okay, he survived, right? So it's not focused on that. It's focused on the people's stories. My question is always, does writing matter? Yeah, have you ever heard of these? This is the version of Stagecoach you know, right? I actually adore Willie Nelson and Chris Christopherson and Johnny Cash. I bet that might have been fun to watch them play, but I bet it's not really a good movie. It's nothing we remember. And the 1966, again, has a great cast. Doesn't stay with you, right? Different writing doesn't stay with you. So I like to say that, well, Ford made Monument Valley look good, which is his job, with a caterer beside him. It's Dudley Nichols who gave tone and class to this genre. He's the one that you're watching, and if you cry, that's the job of a screenwriter, and that's what we're here to talk about. So that's me again, and that's me if you're interested in connecting. Thank you so much for listening. Enjoy the movie.